This is Alex J. Aguiar, and you are listening to Pod With Me.
Ready.
This episode, we have legendary singer, music producer, and DJ Tony Moran. He's one of the pioneers to freestyle music and has worked with some of the most famous artists on the planet. And he's here to tell us his story. Get ready, because the pod starts now.
And then we get this call, like this song comes out called Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. And then we were doing some really interesting stuff in there, I guess, to whoever was listening and that wanted to be Cyndi Lauper's producer. The radio station, who then gave him the phone number to my mother's house. And he was like, "Can I speak to Tony Moran?" She's like, well, my mom's like, "Excuse me, who's calling?" You know, like, my mom is that Latino woman. You know, she's like, "Ekumi."
Ready.
Ready?
Let's go. Roll sound.
I'm excited to have you here, Tony. Welcome to the pod. You know, It Must Be You is one of my favorite tracks. I jammed to it for so long in my car, and I will blast it. And, you know, it's this music that just brings me back, and I really love. And you're very successful as a DJ. You're kicking butt doing remixes for all these amazing stars. Tony, we want to know, how did it all start?
Well, so I'm from Brooklyn, New York, everybody. If anybody wants to know, some people call it the ghetto and some people call it home. I was brought up in an environment where, you know, I didn't get to go outside and play much because there was just so much violence going on. And that, you know, I lived in an area called Brownsville, and it wasn't hateful because there were people, we go to church, we stick together. We only could play like pretty much in the basement of the church. And so basically you learn how to build on relationships, not just from school, like, you know, building relationships from church, applied a lot more things that you had in common. I've eaten at so many different mothers' houses, and my mother would feed so many different people, and they were like, "Just come, everybody come." You know what I mean? So we were rich in love. There was something in me that needed to get expressed, yet I did not know what that was. While I was in high school, there were the smart kids, and there were those whatever you call the cool kids, and I just couldn't find my way to fit into any group. That was the age of the mixtape and the block party and all those kinds of things. And when my parents would let me go out, they would come with me. We'd go to a block party, and I was mesmerized because it wasn't even dance music free as we know it. And you know, disco happened right before me, so even though I could listen to it on our radio, I couldn't experience what it felt like except through my boombox that only had one speaker working. So I couldn't experience the dance music experience in stereo. It was in mono. I thought that kids could kind of break it down. They'll want to be around a cool kid without feeling like an outsider, or watch the cool kids or whatever. And it was based around like somebody passing around mixtapes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my God, I love music. You know, I still, again, because I wasn't exposed to the variety of sounds, I have found a new communication tool that may work for me. So it wasn't methodical. It was like the answers, like, you know, how are you going to know if you're a good ice skater unless somebody actually brings you to the ice? Your pair of roller skates. I spent the whole summer like getting any job, like pressing clothes and dry cleaners, working at the supermarket, anything to save up so I could buy vinyl music, which my first one being Rapper's Delight. I played that to death. And then all of a sudden, then I started listening to other tracks like Chic album. You know, Michael Jackson album had just come out. And then all of a sudden I couldn't afford to pay for music anymore to that level. So I got myself a job. I offered myself to go and pack boxes at a record store that was a DJ specialty store in New York called Downtown Records. That is a world famous hub where many of DJs, of the famed DJs across the land in various genres, went there as their music source because they sold things that weren't available in America. They sold imports. Whoever's listening and understands New York a little bit, I basically was only able to buy music equipment by going to flea markets and buying pieces of speakers that were broken and amplifiers that weren't working. And I was like, well, this is like $20 versus like $200 at the Wiz. And I just had to teach myself how to put stuff together. My dad would help me try to put it together, you know, instead of like maybe putting a puzzle together, and people that we live next door will come in and just help me put pieces together, or say, look, I found speaker wire, things like that.
Hmm.
Next thing you know, I just was like, okay, like now let me see what the craft means to me, with one turntable and my parents' turntable from the family stereo. That's the whole unit, and it's like piece of furniture.
Hmm.
And then by the time I got into my sophomore year, I had saved up for the least expensive turntables that you could get, that had the tools so that you can synchronize the tempos of the music to blend. I just felt like I had a knack for it. So when I went into my sophomore, I must have bought like one notebook, two pencils, a pen, a Sharpie, and about 200 cassettes. And I passed them all around the school.
What type of music was on those cassettes they did?
It was a cross of like rap music and limited dance music. So Evelyn Champagne King, as disco was entering the electronic age, people who love music knew that places existed in New York City, it being a mecca and a melting pot of all kinds of musical styles. So we had heard about the Paradise Garage, Bonds and Kenny Carpenter and Larry Levan, Mark Kamens from Desinteria, and we just all would like, fantasize and try to create theories of how we'd be able to sneak in the club. And I started to kind of like get to a point where I was listening to music to such a great degree. I joined a crew called PRD, called Puerto Rican and Dominican. It was a DJ crew.
Mhm.
Even though I'm Colombian, like they didn't give me my own letter, but
Mhm.
they let me DJ. And I started doing block parties, and then all of a sudden I could feel the energy of people responding to music that I was playing. And I could also feel that maybe there was a way that I did it that didn't sound like I was trying to copy what somebody else was doing. You don't need any kind of physical energy to energize an idea.
Mhm.
That energy comes together out of nowhere, where you don't remember if you ate, you don't remember whatever. You're
Yeah.
just doing your thing, and that's like almost like the nirvana. That is the paradise of creative people. Be in that zone where you're so in it that it's okay to be lost in it, because that's the moment where you get where the world is limitless. It's a universe. Anything is possible. So for my DJ mixing stuff, I'm like, well, what else can I do? That's going to make these transitions and this musical style apply. Records are going by, and I love to hear them play, and I'm loving the songs. And now, why am I understanding the lyrics so much? I haven't been in a relationship, so I don't know what it feels like to break up with somebody, but I know that the words were crafted in such a way. Like "I Want Your Love" by Chic. It is not this giant poem. It's like "I want your love, I need your love," and it's just like, wow. Even though those kind of lyrics have been said a million times, I'm sure, for some reason that melody and that lyric lead to something that I feel is so special. So what I'm trying to say is that I said, well, there's something that I need to try to see how I can bring out the attention that's being put onto these songs that I adore so much. The moment in time that what inspired me was listening to this the pretty much like one of the godfathers, or one of the originators of the art of remixing. His name is Shep Pettibone, and two of them are pretty much like my godfathers, like Shep Pettibone and another producer remixer that was amazing named Arthur Baker. And what they did is they started using like unique editing styles that had not been applied before to kind of create excitement during the song, during the number. Things would repeat, like I've got the power, things like that, and it just created this energy. It created like this build up, and so I was like, whoa, that is so interesting. Let me figure out how to do it. So I went back to the flea market, and I knew that they did it on this thing called reel to reel, which I never, maybe saw on television and like some, documentary about NASA and space flights or whatever, and then I bought one. And it had no instructions. It must have cost like $25, and I'm sorry, I just don't have such a super short version, Alex. I hope this is
No,
okay.
and let me tell you
Um,
something. I'm really enjoying your story, because those out there that did not live through this time, I mean, it's just the excitement of getting one thing, getting the other thing, and nowadays everything's just handed to you.
Wow.
and it's right there to get, and there's no, you know, you had the passion, the creativity, you found a way to do it, and it's a great story because it's just, you know, that you had challenges to get to do it, you know, to be able to.
And it doesn't feel like a challenge where all you have
No,
to
it's
do
an
is have the patience.
exciting
Right,
challenge.
right. You all you have to do is have the patience to discover, and somehow inside of you, when you know that you need to figure out how to do something that you don't know what that is yet,
Hmm.
then just the energy that goes through you to want to discover that, and then all of a sudden then all of a sudden the universe comes together,
Hmm.
and then I'm working in this record store and I meet this Puerto Rican guy,
Hmm.
and he buys records and I'm selling him records, and we're you know, and since I'm only like 16 years old, like, you know,
Hmm.
most people, I was trying to be respectful of legends coming into the store, like Larry Levan, to come in to buy records and stuff, just trying to like not push my ideas on them, just to tell them how appreciative I am of people appreciating them when they go out to the club
Hmm.
and play, the playing, hot stuff,
Yeah.
not hot stuff by Donna Summer,
Yeah.
but like,
Well, they're
but
hits.
playing those
Hmm.
big disco songs, and then that next week people just running into the record store to buy I Specialize in Love, and songs like that. So this Puerto Rican guy comes in and he actually is just like, yeah, man, I'm doing my mixtapes, and I'm doing all this cool kind of stuff that I'm learning from this guy that I hear him doing it named Shep Pettibone. And I said, how are you doing it? He's like, with the pause button. I was like, no, man, no way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And he's like, let me hear it. And then he goes, and then he plays it for me, and his pause are seamless.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, he has a cassette deck that's a double cassette that, again, this is like sometimes, you know, sometimes the tools are what you make out of it, what you make of it. And this guy was playing this amazing stuff. It was like, I got a reel to reel at my mother's house, and I have a cassette deck, and I go and I use pause to repeat things. But since I go from pause on a cassette, and then I transfer it to a reel to reel, and then I do an edit, and then I take it back to cassette, and then I layer a record over it. He's like, "Oh man, I want to do stuff like that." That I didn't have science. I
Yeah.
was just by the time I finished my idea, like the recording was so blurry because you're like taping over tape and then retaping over tape, but at least you got your point across. So he and I came to my mother's house, and I went to his mother's house and worked on pause, and like, we're DJing, and he lived in the projects in Spanish Harlem.
Uh-huh.
I lived in the projects in East New York, Brooklyn, and then all of a sudden we're like, we have a lot in common. I think that we should work on like some mixtapes together
Hmm.
and figure out what that means. And I just, and his name is Alba Cabrera, and he's a legendary musical figure in dance music. And regardless of whether from there spawned this group called the Latin Rascals
Yep.
that
That I love.
we did not that we did not give ourselves that name.
Hmm. How
We
did that?
did
Yeah. How did that come about?
we did these mixtapes, and one of the customers at the record store who would come was a program director at a radio station that was the biggest dance radio station in New York City, called WKTU.
Hmm.
Now, I would sell records to him, and he was one of those unique program directors that before the corporate takeover of the universe, that he was able to put songs in there that were not commercially available at this point, that were like, that were imports from out of this country. So
Hmm.
there were culture club songs that came out,
Hmm.
Boy George, that came out that he would play on the radio. I think Do You Really Want to Hurt Me was like an import that wasn't even commercially available in the United States. And
Wow.
there were other dance songs that he would play. And then so when you worked at a record store that specialized in imports, it wasn't like you get 75 copies of something that's hot.
Hmm.
You get 3. And then you got to wait for a shipment to come from the United Kingdom that goes to a distributor, that goes to everything. So I just love that the fact that he had not power, he had the freedom to listen to things and play them. And so this was a radio station that played some of the DJ tapes from Shep Pettibone.
Mm-hmm.
Shep Pettibone also worked at 98.7 Kiss. So basically, on one occasion, he was selling so many records, and I just gathered up the
Mm-hmm.
nerve to say, I do mixtapes. You
Mm-hmm.
know, would you ever consider listening to one of mine? And I played him. I said, "This is me and my partner Albert Cabrera that we're working on music together." I played him the cassette tape when nobody else was in the record store. He went on some random weekday, like 15 minutes before they closed. And he was like, "Yo, that's like really good." And he was like, "Well, uh, I want to play that tomorrow on Paco's Super Mix on WKTU prime
Wow.
time. You guys." And I'm like, he goes, "Where's your reel to reel?" I was like, "It's a cassette. I mean, I had to transfer it back and forth." He's like, "You need to put this on a reel to reel and submit it to me tomorrow."
Whoa.
Radio personality. Listen to the tape. He called us the Latin lovers first. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
and he played this tape, and then from what the story that they told me is that the lights went ringing on the radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, "What the heck is that?" So what he did is like they played it again. And they were like, "That's it. You guys got to come back. You need to do one for us like 2 or 3 times a week." We were so
Of
excited.
course.
We
Yeah.
listening to yourselves on the radio is way different than listening to it at your mother's house.
Yeah.
And so on one occasion we were recording him playing our mix. This is like in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? These are the Latin Rascals, and that's what I'm talking about. And we recorded it a cappella. And then so after that, every DJ tape that we made, we kept putting the Latin Rascals, Rascals.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, we had our own float on the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I didn't know what was going on, except that some phenomenon was building itself around this. And our tapes are like getting so popular. We're starting to do some DJ gigs, and we're still not even 20 years old yet. We're kind of living the life because we don't really have to make that kind of income where like we need to put a deposit down
Yeah.
like first month on an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
We're still doing this stuff out of our mother's house, and now they're giving us some money so we get to buy a real to reel
Mm-hmm.
that that operates with what people were doing in regards to what we were doing. Things were clearer. And then we get this call, like this song call comes out called "Girls Just Want to Have Fun,"
Mm-hmm.
by Cyndi Lauper, and then we were doing some really interesting stuff in there. I guess to whoever was listening, and that wanted to be Cyndi Lauper's producer, and he called the radio station, who then gave him the phone number to my mother's house, and he was like, "Can I speak to Tony Moran?" She's like, "Well," my mom's like, "Excuse me, who's calling?" Like, my mom is that Latino woman. She's like, "Ekumi," and my son. You know what I mean?
You ever saw Que Pasa USA?
My mom is the Que Pasa USA.
Yeah.
So he gets me on the phone. He's like, "Look, Tony, I need for you to come to my studio, and whatever you did to Girls Just Want to Have Fun, I'm working on Cyndi Lauper's record right now, and I need for you to do that to this new song."
What did you feel at that moment?
I didn't even understand. I had never been in a recording studio before. We went over there, and then so he gives us this tour of the studio, which to me at that time I felt like I was in a space station or something like that, and I was just so awestruck. But he did not care that we were 2 18 or 19-year-old guys. He didn't, he didn't care. He just see that there were these two people who were hard, and he was like, "I love what you're doing, man. I think that you should do that to this. Do you need for me to tell you anything? I'm just going to leave you in the studio, and will you give me something tomorrow?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, he left us in his recording studio, and to work on a project, Cyndi Lauper, but like nobody showed us how to do anything. We didn't know how to work anything. So he and I, this guy Albert and I, was like, we were taking our SATs or something, and we read every manual. We didn't even know how to cue up the tape on those more sophisticated machines. And next thing you know, we did it. By the time he came in the next day, fortunately it was in the afternoon. Of course, we had not slept, but when you're like 18 or 19 years old, like it doesn't show in your eyes right away. And he loved what we did. From that moment on, he would let us work on the movie soundtrack, and
It started
we
escalating.
got. And then it's like, yeah, like Sidney Poitier works in the room, and then he asks us to work on the Rolling Stones, and Mick Jagger comes in the room, and then Bono comes in the room, and then Nile Rodgers comes in the room. He asked me, he says, I need to introduce you to Duran Duran. You need to do your stuff. You need to like put that out there. And all of a sudden, we just started working on all these records, not just from being given tapes, but the
Mhm.
artists would come in, and it's like I edited Born in the USA, and Bruce Springsteen comes in the room.
That is huge. That is huge.
It was like,
And
what are you doing?
especially at that time, that is, nowadays I think everything's so saturated, but in that
Well,
time, just seeing any celebrity, it was a lot more powerful.
music was really beginning to embrace electronic music. As an example, Planet Rock, AEIOU. So my boss was the producer and the writer of Planet Rock, Planet
Hmm.
Patrol, AEIOU. For those who don't remember, like a lot of our electronic music really stems from what was done then, like groups like New Order and Pet Shop Boys. So all of these world class musicians from all around the world, that were joining in to make all of this pop commercial rock music and all that kind of stuff, said, well, we'll help you do it, you know? So Cover Girls by Show Me was pretty much done, like all
Hmm.
people doing the music, for basically nothing for us, and basically helping us guide. And it's like, I knew how to work a drum machine. I didn't know what freestyle was. I didn't know that AEIOU would or Planet Rock would have different beats the way that Albert and myself put it together.
Hmm.
But all of a sudden it was like, yo man, you got something going on here. And so all of the background singers that were working on all these giant projects for all these big bands, we saw them all the time. So, and we just also happened to be all the same age. And then we wrote a song called "Show Me." Show me, you really love me. Actions
Hmm.
speak louder than words. And we
Show
did that
me,
with
show
Andy.
me. Hmm.
You
Really
really
love
love me.
me. Yeah,
Actions speak
speak louder
louder
than
than
dun, dun,
words.
dun.
So again, all this kind of stuff. I guess I can say that it happened so fast, but it was really what my whatever success that people could credit me for having for whatever it is I've done for musically has only been because I've been opened this doorway emotionally to
It came
express
from your
myself
heart. It
from
came
the
from your heart.
heart.
Yeah.
And having people receptive to that. Some people do things all on their own, and
Hmm.
that's how they like to keep it. I was just part of this like jam session, and I loved it.
It was
I loved it. I don't care how many things I had to put together.
So when was the first time that you got in front of the mic and sang?
Basically, I was just like sitting in a room where Andy Panda, Mark Anthony, Anastasia, and Sapphire, and they were just basically saying, "Man, you got to do your own stuff. Albert, throw down a beat." And then I'm with Andy Panda and Sapphire and Mark Anthony, and they're just like letting the music play. And it was like, and we were working on a song that was based off of class, doing freestyle versions of of classical hits, like ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, dun, 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 stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Uh-huh.
And Arabian Nights, the general music came from a classical piece called March Slav. Now, at that moment, I had no great education of classical hits and what they meant to me. It just wound up being that we had to select a group of songs that were available for me to work on because it's called that those kind of musical pieces are fall into the fall into a group called public domain, which means that you could actually work on that music and flip it around and nobody can sue you for adjusting it.
Hmm.
And so while this beat is playing and that classical song is playing over our beats, Albert and Albert Cabrera and Sapphire and Mark Anthony just said, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling like this Arabian," because the song sounded Arabian.
Hmm.
So so all of a sudden it's like they just started singing and all of a sudden came out Arabian Nights, and I'm sitting in the room and I'm like, it's like I'm just trying to catch up to them. I go, oh, it just happened. Like
Hmm.
that just happened. And so it was like, oh man, let's rock this out. Let's rock this out. What's the story? And I was like, I can't think of it. I can't think of it. Let's just work on it. And Andy Pans is sitting on the pad. And I think he wrote most of the verses in the toilet because he needed a minute and there was no place for privacy. And so basically, we put ourselves in this moment. We were all put in a genie bottle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where everything had, we became spiritual. What spiritual means to you when you're not on drugs and you're in a recording studio, hanging with your friends, and an Arabic kind of, like instrumentation is going on behind
The
you.
natural high. Mm-hmm.
And none of us had ever traveled before. So when Andy was writing lyrics for, like, I've been to France and England and the shores of Timbuktu,
Mm-hmm.
like, there are no shores in Timbuktu. I still don't even know where Timbuktu is. It was just, we were doing things that sounded outlandish to us and that rhymed. But nothing can compare to A Strange Land Where I Met You. And I remember all of them just like egging me on. So like Albert was like, I don't want to sing. I don't want to sing. And so then I had no real choice but to go in and go do it. And I didn't really, I think that in the case of the song Arabian Nights, the vocal is part of a character that they helped me to get into to get the message out and not feel embarrassed while I was singing it. So however each one of those lyrics are and however outlandish or far-fetched
Mm-hmm.
that they may be in actuality, in that moment, we saw sands. We
Yeah.
saw the sands of Baghdad. We saw all those things, and it all meant something to us. And then all of a sudden, like, this is cool. Who else is in the room? Little Louis Vega, who we used to bring all our jams to, that was playing at a club called Devil's Nest at the time and a club called Hot Throb in New York. So all of these, we had no, we didn't know what an icon or any of that stuff meant. All we were doing was trying to like be around each other as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
because we all loved the same things. Whether it was like the diner on 23rd Street, on the South Bronx, or wherever, like we just did everything like a Rat Pack.
Yeah.
We were a Rat Pack, which eventually turned into like, this thing of freestyle. And so Little Louis Vega started playing this song in this club called the Devil's Nest. By the time that the song got released, like he played it for a year before a record company put it out. So that was back in the days where the only time you could hear a song, there was no Spotify, no iTunes, the radio, or you had to go to the club.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so these clubs that were located in New York, it was just like one was called the Devil's Nest, but Show Me was already such a hit before the song came out because we recorded the vocal as a demo before we ever put music on it.
The best thing is you were creating a beat that was different. You guys did something that, that was different. You weren't doing the norm.
We did, It Must Be You, which was just like, Albert's in the room is making beats. I'm singing. And all of a sudden it's like I can feel my heartbeat pounding and so
I'm next to you.
When I'm next to you, so a lot of the lyrics that we were incorporating into our music at that time had we were able to put lyrics to things that we in our mind can actually believe, like something that was physical. Your heartbeat pumping, being next to you, body burning, so it just wanted to be that so we wrote that song and we didn't know what it was going to be like. And then all of a sudden, like, history repeats itself with how that song was so appreciated without having the traditional Latino chords that have been in other music that is not related to freestyle. It's amazing. It's just when you do it and it works, it works.
Yeah.
No Reason to Cry. It has those those chord progressions by Judy Torres.
Yeah.
Cynthia, and then George Amon, his music, and when it comes to freestyle, in regards to his music, he was able to use with Bad of the Heart portions of what you may call like the traditional or repeated approach to Latin chords to make a dance track. But Chris Barbosa and Mark Liggett, who produced Bad of the Heart and many of his, Where Does That Lead Love and, many songs thereafter, we're going to the next level with it. and they were also extreme, true pioneers of and they and people didn't mind you working with their people at that time. So the same, people that were working for Chris Barbosa and Mark Lewitt, hope that people like revere their memories, that they're still alive. They put so much effort, even when the budget ran out, to make that Let the Music Play like sound like it was unique to something else. It also did not hurt for anybody who's interested in the technical aspect that all of the people who worked on those records originally with us,
Mhm.
who were engineers, basically just came out of internship.
Wow.
And the reason that they worked for us was because they could do it for cheap, but we would spend all night in the studio trying to figure out what our beat should really sound like. And because they weren't charging by the hour in that way, we were able to spend all night to create, like Mantronics, who did All in All. You are my all in all.
You.
And then again, it's like I mentioned George Moran, because like when he did Where Does That Leave Love,
Mm-hmm.
like that
Oh, that
song
song's
was
amazing.
like
Mm-hmm.
exactly, and I was like, I'm too busy liking what you're doing, George, for me to be that jealous of you. You know what I mean? I just recorded with George Mann. I just recorded a new song with him, and we're in the studio, and now we just been around together. So I can't exactly sing "Battle of the Heart" with him because I probably would not be able to hit all those notes. Where does that leave love and look into my eyes? Just all
Without
had
you.
they all came, without you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, you got to leave me room for like a couple others except George Mann,
Yeah,
much as I love him. But he stepped it up, and he expressed another talent pool that just only allowed our spectrum to be more vivid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so, freestyle songs, "Change on Me,"
Yeah.
Cynthia, all my top 10. "No Reason to Cry," Judy Torres, "Silent Morning," Noel.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying the obvious. I'm just saying these are things that like move me.
How about the questions?
Move me.
The questions.
Yeah, but I wrote that, so you told me not to use my own song.
I didn't know you wrote that. Look at that. I love that song.
I had no idea what the name of the song was going to be. I had already done the music in order to provide us, some kind of to provide rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can come up with something. And believe me, like we were writing these lyrics, and we didn't even know the way that the sentence was going to end, because the question that I have to ask, since I have the chance to ask it, is after all this time's gone by, please tell me why. So it's just one of those things.
I think about the times we had. So much good, it makes me mad.
Yeah. And well, and that was because, that part happened because, I'm like, I love the way this song is going, but there's just something about like a child that play that I feel like there's this section that's missing. It's like it's just like like a bridge or something. And, Noel was really open to it. And he's just like, and back in the age, back in those days, like everybody had to sing those records. You have to live with your performance.
Mm-hmm.
Every song that Noel sang, there's no auto tune, there's no fixing the notes, there's no any of that kind of stuff. So any note that's not exactly where you want it to be, you can live with that. But that is the musical piece. There's just
TKA.
Well, those are my babies, so it's like that's the closest
actually, one of my favorites for sure. No, my favorite one is "Give Your Love to Me." Give your love to me.
I love that song.
Yeah.
Tears May Fall. We wrote with KL, Andy Panda and myself wrote with him, and
Louder Than Love.
Louder Than Love was written by KL and Joey Gardner, who's another amazing producer that did all those great songs like Maria, and which Maria was like, she was fine. The girl came from the project. She had long blonde hair.
He sounded like that.
And a body beyond compare. And then the whole
drug dealer.
A drug dealer. She had a boyfriend, a drug dealer, but I didn't mind. So
she wants to be with me. I love it.
So he's amazing. And actually, for everyone who wants to know, TK has a brand new record. I'm not trying to be a commercial.
Is It Love?
But
I love Is It Love.
Is It Love? We sang together, K7 and myself. He has a new song out there called "Slipping Through My Hands," which is like one of the most popular new freestyle songs that are out.
Slip into my hand?
Yeah. Slipping Through My Hands.
Okay, cool. I'm going to look for it.
I just got it on iTunes, and I'm so proud of him. And he's working with other producers that are re-inspiring freestyle.
Are you guys keeping?
2020.
Are you guys keep freestyle 2020? Are you guys trying to keep the same beat? Because that's what or are you changing it a bit? What do you think?
Well, so I'm not doing that music myself
Mm-hmm.
specifically, but I'm just saying that. So what I just noticed is that there's always the next level of doing of making your music, and then me, because I've already done this so many times before.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of doing freestyle, or even if I've done some demos since then,
Mm-hmm.
I cannot help develop to include the skills that I've honed between then and now,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't put much of it out. But when I hear, like, for example, what this producer Willie Valentine is doing with with the new TK song, and that people are receiving it with such in such an amazing way. I'm like, he's like, basically the way he's, in my eyes, to my point of view, he is expressing freestyle in a way that's saying, wait, we're not done yet. These stories are there's stories that are still yet to be written that will include what we found to be most dynamic in the traditional freestyle sound. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what he's doing. And I think that other people will come out, and K7 did a great job when he did, like, his K7 jams, like Come Baby Come and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, and was
Mm-hmm.
able to find a way where rap or hip hop music, meets freestyle music. And then, then I started producing, like, Gloria Stefan and Cher and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
My boss,
And
my ex-boss.
yeah, so when working for them,
Mm-hmm.
the best way for me to have worked with Gloria Stefan, recording all the vocals on the album that I produced with her and
Mm-hmm.
Emilio,
Mm-hmm.
is that it had the, I guess, the experience for me to have produced people before, where I knew that it's all about expressing yourself and expressing it, and around surrounded by true professionals, that they know the reason I have a producer in the room is because I need for you to find the best of me from your point of view,
Mm-hmm.
without doing anything to distort their perception of themselves. And so that was my experience with Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
And Cher was just like, anytime Cher sang on a song that I worked on, she was just like, okay, I'm going to do it now. And she gave
Mm-hmm.
you Cher. If I recorded Patti LaBelle, Patti
Mm-hmm.
gave you Patti.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever she could remember
What
from the
what
melody
what
she
out of all
sang.
the artists you've worked with, because everybody, I, for example, I've interviewed plenty of artists, but I only get excited about the ones that I grew up with, or, like, for example, I'm interviewing you and I'm excited interviewing you. So I get excited when I'm about to interview someone that meant something in as I grew up, or that I admired so much.
Thank you.
Out of everyone, as far as you, out of everyone that you've worked with, because you've worked with so many artists, who was one that stands out in your mind that you were pretty, you had a little butterflies and you were excited to meet because it meant something to you?
Luther Vandross.
Ah.
Because with him wanting to meet me to produce him, an R&B artist, when I was still only doing dance music,
Mm-hmm.
was like, whoa, like, how does he even know who I am? You know, and and meeting with him and writing songs with him in the room,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and hearing him sing, like, I've heard amazing singers throughout my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never saw somebody sing something so beautifully from a physical view, like watching him sing a note behind four humidifiers going, you know what I mean, in a room
Mm-hmm.
with me. Mariah's in the next room, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
he is just, it was a magical, God rest his soul, it was a
Mm-hmm.
magical experience for him to respect my opinion and to see him do his craft. And in all time, there's amazing singers. Like, I love working with John Cicada because we were like two kids in the candy store. I love recording him. His personality was so great.
Awesome.
Some people that I work with, like, I've been in Celine Dion and sang to Celine Dion with Emilio Estefan in the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I can't get beyond the butterflies that I had in my stomach, and the fact that she even wanted to pay attention to stuff. And of course, Emilio Estefan was a humongous reason why the people were in the room were expected to be in the room. Let's just work on, before he before Donna Summer passed away, I was producing Donna Summer,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was working on a, prior to this, was working on a duet with Donna Summer and Barry Manilow, doing a remake of "Could This Be Magic?" Could this be the magic at last? Could this be magic? Well, whoever knows that, is you're a
Mm-hmm.
disco buff, but sitting next to him at the piano, and he's like, I'll be Donna, you be Barry. I'm like, seriously? You know what I mean? Meaning, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to sing the different parts. It's
Yeah.
a duet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kind of key changes because when it comes to guy and girl duets, I mean, just knowing that this could happen. And
Mm-hmm.
had it happened, it doesn't matter. At least the moment happened where I knew that this was a possibility. Donna Summer, Barry Manilow, Tony Moran producing them. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, I've done something.
Yes. Yes. What
Yeah.
What does mom say about all this?
She's just been so supportive from everything. Again, to having all my friends over, and my parents owned the dry cleaners in the ghetto, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, as while we were living there, um, it wasn't the economy. It was just like drugs came into play in our neighborhoods, and just like you watch in New Jack City, if anybody's ever seen that movie, like the neighborhood deteriorated so quickly because just because
Mm-hmm.
that's what those drugs did to people.
Yeah.
And so, I'd be playing the dry cleaners. I would turn my speakers outside the window and
Mm-hmm.
I'd pump up the bass, and I felt like I had to do a set. Everybody in the neighborhood was listening. And the fact was that not everybody in the neighborhood was listening, is that everybody in the neighborhood had no choice but to listen because I had my speakers out the window and blasting it at full volume.
That's funny. When you look back at your career, right?
Yeah.
What stands out? What's the biggest highlight? What's the most thing you're thankful for, or that you can remember being most excited about?
I could breathe, like for every other mistake that I've made in life, at least I've been able to like have this anchor where I could say that at some place I can say that my intentions are based with the ultimate sincerity, as I can only start from there. And mistakes along the way means I started from a good place, and not everything I've done is right. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time figuring out like what I could have done better. It's just what do I do with what I have,
Mm-hmm.
and how could I share? Whether it's knowledge, or sometimes the greatest gift that you can share is optimism with people, and just let them know that it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Just let them know it doesn't matter if the DJ got the gig that you didn't get,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's basically you keep doing the best of you, and you stay committed. It's not a guarantee for success. Guarantee that you don't have to turn back and saying that you sold yourself out.
Because the thing with you, Tony, is that you had the passion. You didn't look at the competition. You looked at what you were doing, and you gave it your all. And that's why everything got accomplished. Everything came to you. Everything was developed that way. Because when you focus on your competition, when you focus on how you set the gig, I think the person's just shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, there's sometimes it's like I'm DJing in some places, and I just tell all the other DJs that are there, and I'm sure many of the DJs that that have been in this business for a long time, go into a place, and when you're standing in the DJ booth, for all those people that are appreciating you, I'm not really spending a lot of time on the hater, but what it is, I kind of feel for the person who's staring at me, saying, I'm not just going to be you, I'm going to be better than you. You know what I mean? And you see them looking at you like that, and like and so
when you
I'm
come
like,
from a place of everybody together making it happen, and then you're seeing
yeah,
that.
I'm like, yeah. So when they go on, I'm like, man, knock it out. Knock it out. They're here for you. Take advantage of that moment.
They must
and give
not
that
know.
to them.
They must not know your history because
They think I'm. Some of them, I can see them. It's like, you are so full of crap. You're just saying that. You must have got out a fortune cookie or just saw the Gandhi or something like that. But I mean it, because it's like that's the way. Back in my day, like people. And still to this day, there are a lot of people that are doing stuff in all kinds of music, whether it's rock, jazz, whatever. People are in there to do stuff and knock it out. And they're rooting, like, you have to knock it out for me to knock it out.
Did you ever get to meet Peter Rohoffner?
I did meet Peter Rohoffner. I DJed with him several times at the Roxy. And he was like, he wasn't a private person. He just was kind of like a camp. He had his crew. But he's asked me to DJ with him. I requested for him to DJ with me, and and I really I have respected his work. So however it is that he makes stuff happen, like when I hear remixes like Beautiful by Christina Aguilera, I'm like, that is art. That is truly art.
Let me see. Maya. What do you? How about Maya?
Maya, I think, is amazing. I think she's an incredible songwriter
I love
that
it.
has created a signature that is like none other. And for someone who's living in Israel,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, can put together over and over again this collection of feelings with this melody.
Yes.
They definitely sound like they should be together, but it's not a Xerox copy.
Her song, her music, the lyrics and stuff remind me of freestyle.
They do, because you could play, you could do it easily, do a freestyle version of any of her songs.
Yeah, yeah. From the first time, I love that song.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. So, what DJs do nowadays? Which do you like?
Well, because this is DJs and DJ artists, producers, and songwriters, so that you go into like multi categories. If I'm going to like if I'm going to hear a DJ play, I want to hear like Danny Toro. Because what he does is like full impact.
I know Danny. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I love Danny.
Yeah.
And he's so fast. And I like the beat. I like the rhythm. The rhythm is fast. He plays fast.
Yeah.
That's what I like. Yeah, he's very good.
But we DJ sometimes, and we're sitting there, and he's a very opinionated person. I adore him for that. Hanging out, he's like, Tony, we just need to bang them out. And I know you're all about the quote unquote journey, but we need to bang them out. And I said, Danny, that's why we're playing together, because we incorporate.
What is the latest stuff you've been doing?
Well, so I've been working on a bunch of new music, and then I'm actually working on a freestyle project, to be honest, that is with Andy Panda Tripoli, who I've written like many successful freestyle songs. The idea is still there. We were hoping to have it out this summer, but we really need to have all those songs done. And basically, we wanted to create an album that celebrates freestyle by artists that you have celebrated for freestyle.
That would be amazing.
And I tell other DJs, and they have their their big song of the moment or whatever, and it's just like, remember, paying it forward is the best residual that you can get from your work, because it comes back to you every time. It may not come back to you today or tomorrow or whatever, but you can look back and I know that I've paid it forward. I know that I've contributed, and I know that I've done my best, to be in the room and to have an ear. And I can't be, all things to all people. But again, I could look back and not be, and not feel bad that I wasn't trying to do the best of me through whatever challenges that have been going on around me. So let's do it. Meaning you can do it, or you can do it where that you tried. The science of having a hit song is a combination of your creativity, your work, your dedication to your work, and also time to find your way, figure out what's going to make you stylistically with using so much of the same content that other people use to find an identity with you. Some reason that people can, and you could use everything that, either God has gifted you with, or the talents that you're looking, that you're investing to develop yourself. And that can include all kinds of things. How to market yourself, how to, do a free gig, prove yourself. You know what I mean? I go in and DJ, and I'm like, look, for all the love that I know that might be out there tonight, I'm willing to prove myself from the beginning of my set to the end of it. I do my homework.
Loved having you on the show, and I thank you so much for telling us your story, your journey, which I'm sure, I think this story will inspire.
Well, in letting people know that they have to believe in themselves to make that effort to try. When freestyle, just like disco, just like rock music, you know what I mean? At some point, it died. And, this music dies for a period without basically people abandoned it, or they were embarrassed by it, or whatever. And I remember going to record companies after having platinum albums and gold albums all, around my wall for different accomplishments. And then going into some record companies and people saying, that stuff ain't happening anymore, man. Sorry, not interested.
Wow.
Not interested. And so, it was like, I wasn't expecting that, but I had to think about, what do I do with that? So basically, I said, let me prove it to myself. Hence, an opportunity came for me to remix a song for L'Oreal Stefan for free called I'm Not Giving You Up. And 2 years later, I was producing her album. If you feel that, that creative spirit in you, don't wait for somebody to hire you to do it. Do it.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, Tony, one more thing. Don't fall off the pod.
That's a wrap.
For more on Pod with me, you can go to alexjaguiar.com. Hey, and don't forget to download our app. And if you love the 80s and all the retro stuff, you're going to love my new channel. It's called Back to Retro on YouTube. Check it out. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't fall off the pod.